Do you know if you'll be able to have children? You don't know, or you won't be able to?
I don't know.
And these are the permanent effects of puberty blockers that many teenagers are taking. So, because we've been told so often that it's reversible.
Yeah, I was one of the people that touted that shit. They're completely reversible. That's why I should be able to have them. All of these things that are touted by trans activists are completely self-serving because they want to use those things themselves and are trying to justify them by saying, "Oh no, they're fine," and look at this really niche study that I found.
But nobody, I suppose, warned you that you might not be able to have children, or?
I was told it would have an effect on my bone density, but we'll monitor it, and should it get anywhere near osteoporosis, we will stop. Let's just say I'm having some issues on that front with regards to my clinicians. But I was told that the young women who had gone through puberty, who were on this for the same hormone disorders, would have done it for a decade and still been able to have children, no problem. You just need to sort of kickstart your system again, and we'll monitor your organ health to check that nothing's shrinking or rotting. Then I sort of hit the crunch point where I had a set of bloods done around the time that I had the osteoporosis diagnosis, and it's like, yeah, your estrogen levels are basically non-existent. So when you suppress the pineal gland, there are other small glands in the body that produce some baseline level of hormones. It doesn't completely eradicate it. Plus, I was taking hormones on top of it to try and preserve some of my fertility and bone density. But this blood analysis came back as basically no estrogen whatsoever in my bloodstream.
Oh, wow.
So I've got some question mark over why my body's no longer absorbing estrogen. And if it can't do that, and if I can't get it to start absorbing it again or start producing it for itself again, my bone density will continue to drop, and I very likely will not be able to have children because my body's not producing the hormones it needs to sustain a pregnancy.
A press release published December 11th, 2024 from the UK government reads, "Existing emergency measures banning the sale and supply of puberty-suppressing hormones will be made indefinite, following official advice from medical experts. The Commission on Human Medicines has provided independent expert advice that there is currently an unacceptable safety risk in the continued prescription of puberty blockers to children. It recommends indefinite restrictions while work is done to ensure the safety of children and young people. The NHS stopped the routine prescription of puberty blocker treatments to under 18s in March 2024, following the CAS review into gender identity services. Puberty blockers for the treatment of gender incongruence and/or gender dysphoria in under 18s were banned temporarily in May 2024 after the CAS review found that there was insufficient evidence to show that they were safe. Legislation will be updated today to make the order indefinite and will be reviewed in 2027. Puberty blockers is a colloquial term to refer to the use of drugs, typically Lupron, which aim to prevent puberty from occurring. While it was previously only prescribed to children to prevent precocious puberty, the rise of children identifying as transgender has led to it being prescribed as a solution to gender dysphoria. The idea was to offer children time to choose which puberty they want to undergo, either by continuing with their naturally bodily processes or by using HRT.
I know all of you take one hormone and then you become trans rights activists. I wanted to give myself time to really explore my feelings and detransition before I shared them with you. But if you want to see the truth, this is the truth. I'm an almost 30-year-old man. This is what I look like. This is what I sound like as an almost 30-year-old man. This is what happens when you let people transition in adolescence before they've had a chance to grow up. Before they had a chance to even learn who they were. Not just but pressure people to transition at these ages. Young, vulnerable people who are already so suggestible. And I feel like everyone is ignoring the pain because they are afraid that it threatens their choices and their narrative. If you want to transition in your 20s, you've had a chance to be a man or a woman and this is what you want to do, okay, that's one thing. But the active pressuring of people to transition so they can preserve their femininity, which is what happened with me, I was told that that if I allowed myself to age, that I would become masculine and that it would never be possible and that I would do it anyway, and that I would be a more masculine transgender person like them. And so I made the choices that I thought were right for me at the time. I do take accountability. I did it in secret from my parents. I take accountability for all my choices. But when is the trans community going to take accountability for theirs? For leading me down this path? This is the face of an almost 30-year-old man. This is the voice of an almost 30-year-old man.
Underlying this is an idea that one should be able to choose their puberty. Puberty is uncomfortable for many because it is an unprecedented and major shift to one's body, accompanied with hormonal shifts and a change in social status. In other words, experiencing discomfort and bouts of emotionalism are a normal part of growing up. And while teens should be given support for any emotional anguish, presenting a stage of the human life cycle as a choice one can make an option to opt in or out of, just as one might for a video game character, is irresponsible and wrong. Presenting puberty as a choice further appeals to the depersonalization pushed by increasing internet usage, where the mind and body are separate things and how one is perceived can be controlled as a matter of fact. Not only is the concept of medicalizing every discomfort or human experience dangerous mentally, as it encourages a disconnect from the body, but unnecessary medical treatment is harmful in and of itself.
First of all, the most permanent thing a kid can go through is puberty. So when you deny a kid the opportunity to pause puberty, we're just talking about puberty blockers.
Which straight kids do all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Yes, since the 80s, kids have been prescribed puberty blockers for a variety of reasons. And the law you passed prevents that. So you steal from kids who would like to be able to pause the ability to further. Fewer than 3% of people who do any kind of transition regret it and go back. Fewer than 3%. Finally, I want to make this very clear. I'm not done. You were so mean to everybody else who want to talk to you. My turn. There has been really robust standards of care laid out by all the leading medical associations that has been in existence for a long time that is science-based about guidelines for these things. But to be clear, the guidelines are very specific about this is supposed to be the parent's decision with their kid, with their medical provider. What you did was rob all those families of choices. Your opinion, because you believe you know better than science, you know better than parents, you know better than people who even do know themselves, you're going to prevent them from having options because you personally have a problem with something that a couple of people and some other people you're aware of knew.
It sounds
None
like
of them are
something within
statistically
himself.
significant. Maybe you've got dozens of people you know of, hundreds. That's a teeny tiny little sliver. You will never know or know of all of these people, and yet you've decided for them, and shame on you for it.
There has been little research on the long-term effects of those prescribed puberty blockers, which is often off-label Lupron. Lupron has been used for everything from endometriosis to prostate cancer to precocious puberty, and its detrimental side effects are well established, even in those with a legitimate medical need for it. Research from as early as 2017 found the negative impact of pubertal suppression on EF. Another study found that puberty blockers increase depression symptoms and slow reaction time in healthy women and reduce long-term spatial memory in sheep. However, despite this, puberty blockers have been advertised as safe for years, and many children who otherwise would have been likely to outgrow their dysphoria are now dealing with the repercussions of their use.
I still have issues with my urinary tract. I have to use the restroom pretty frequently, and I didn't even know that this was possible. This is like a pretty huge quality of life issue that I'm experiencing, and I'm just not really getting any help for it. And on top of that, I do hate to speak about it, but I'm experiencing sexual dysfunction at the age of 18. That's something that women usually go through when they're in their 40s to 50s.
Right.
How is I supposed to know?
Earlier in 2024, the CAS review made it clear that there is no convincing evidence that the use of puberty blockers is beneficial, let alone worth the harm it causes. As reported in the press release, James Palmer, the NHS Medical Director for Specialized Services, said, "Evidence reviews by NICE and NHS England, supported by Dr. Cass, clearly show that there is not enough evidence to support the safety or clinical effectiveness of puberty-suppressing hormones for the treatment of gender dysphoria or incongruence, which is why the NHS decided that they would no longer be routinely offered to children and young people. We welcome the government's decision to further ban access through private prescribers, which closes a loophole that posed a risk to the safety of children and young people. But this will be a difficult time for young people and their families who are affected. So we are extending an offer of targeted support to anyone affected by the banning order from their local mental health services," which is more than many are offering those who are detransitioning.
There is not enough evidence about the long-term effects of using puberty blockers to treat gender incongruence to know whether they are safe or beneficial. I am acting on the Commission's advice to put an indefinite order in place to restrict the sale or supply of puberty blockers through a prescription issued by either a private UK prescriber or a prescriber registered outside the UK for under 18s. I know it's not easy being a trans kid in our country today. The trans community is at the wrong end of all of the statistics for mental ill health, self-harm and suicide. I can't pretend to know what that's like, but I do know what it's like to feel you have to bury a secret about yourself, to be afraid of who you are, to be bullied for it, and then to experience the liberating experience of coming out. I know it won't feel like it based on the decisions I'm taking today, but I really do care about this, and so does this government. I'm determined to improve the quality of care and access to healthcare for all trans people.
Now, while I am glad that this is a huge step forward in the demedicalization of discomfort, the mindset that has led to the use of puberty blockers to begin with remains, wherein controlling the way you are perceived by others is a right and puberty must be given permission to occur for disrupting this with pesky sex characteristics. Hopefully, the continuing changes the CAS review has created will continue to spread to other aspects of gender-based care in the UK, because in the US, the battle is infuriatingly ongoing.
Did you know that some side effects of puberty blockers include loss of bone density, major depression, and possible infertility? Well, if you didn't, that's okay. What I was listing is actually the side effects for many SSRIs, also known as antidepressant medications, many of which have been approved by the FDA for use in children as young as 8 years old. But you really don't see a lot of legislatures across the country pushing to ban these medications now, do you? So do you really care about the side effects of these medications, or are you just looking for an excuse to be a bigot?
This, dear blocker, this, dear viewers, is where we part. I would have liked to add in a section on puberty blockers in the US, but the court case is still in the middle of it, and I'd rather not have to do 5 videos on various updates. I'd rather wait for it to be over and then give you guys an overview, so keep an eye out for that in 2025. However, I'm pretty happy with the way that things are going in the UK, with the CAS report really having played a role in how gender medicine is ongoing and being reevaluated, although I'm really still annoyed at the concept of gender incongruence being medicalized, because you're basically just saying, my son is playing with dolls and dresses and I don't like that, so it's an illness. And a large majority of those who have childhood gender dysphoria end up growing up into healthy homosexuals when they get older. But a lot of these children are never going to be able to do that because they've been medicalized before they even reach puberty, which means they don't even get to develop into having the capacity for sex lives, which, yeah, is a human part of being alive, being able to have and enjoy sex with other people and experience sexual attraction. I'm really hoping that in the future we continue to see more changes there, because it's basically conversion therapy. And on that note, the medicalization of discomfort is something that I've noticed quite often where, for example, in a previous video, I mentioned how a lot of children, a lot of teens will basically go to a healthcare professional and say, I have these symptoms, I have ADHD, but it's really just you were bored in class, so you tapped your foot. You daydreamed, because that's a thing humans do, you daydream. Every single part of the human experience is being sliced up into a new label, a new diagnosis, and that allows you to be prescribed medicines. And on top of that, it makes you think that you're all alone and you're not like the other people, except maybe the ones you share the label with, which in turn is a huge issue. I've noticed that if I mention, for example, something on anxiety, some people will respond with, well, people with anxiety experience XYZ. Yeah, well, I've had anxiety too. I don't think I need to tell you my diagnoses to be able to have an opinion on a topic. And that kind of way of thinking kind of spreads to a lot of stuff. For example, a lot of white feminists feel uncomfortable with critiquing Islam or cultures like Black culture or any other minority culture because they feel like they're overstepping. I'm not a part of it. Maybe I don't understand it completely. No, you don't have to be able to show, you don't have to show your label or your card to have an opinion on something. You can just have an opinion on something after you've done your research. Hell, you can have an opinion without your research as long as you're open to hearing more. And it's just quite stifling for conversation to not be able to say, yeah, I don't think this is right, or I think you could try this, without having to kind of show your credentials first. It's very pretentious, very condescending, and very much like a HRification of individual peer-to-peer communication. If I'm talking to you as an individual about something, it shouldn't sound like I'm talking to my HR director. And in a lot of ways, especially on topics like this, it is. Anyhow, if you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, let me know in the comment section down below. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!